Well, hello everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 5th, 2019, and this is a summary of the personal productivity class that we had today. So how we started, like we start with all of our classes, is issues from participants. So we sort of went around the room and said, kind of what are you dealing with? What are you frustrated with? And for the most part, people in the class had made some progress on some things, making their life more productive or more systemized, but they're still noticing all the things that haven't been done. Things like backlog, things like clutter, more problems, more issues that haven't been taken care of. I mean, life keeps moving, so things pile up. So there was a little bit of overwhelm on the call, and we started talking about what to do about that. The first thing we talked about is getting help. And we said, what kind of help do people get? And one of the things that we talked about is how people in power who are involved in really big things in the world get help. And usually people in power have a personal assistant or a chief of staff or someone that is running their life for them, running their schedule for them, helping prioritize, and keeping them focused. So all they have to do is follow that person around and engage with what's in front of them next. And most of us can't afford a full-time personal assistant or chief of staff, but if you can, that's something to seriously consider. So if you run a business and you can afford a full-time employee, getting someone highly organized to run your life for you could be a great choice, especially if you don't particularly like organizing things yourself and you mostly spend your time thinking about the vision or things that you want to accomplish big picture. You're not really in the weeds. Now, there were some people on the call, though, that like to control everything, that like to come up with their own systems. And a personal assistant wouldn't be a good choice for that person. We talked about house cleaners and professional organizers and getting groceries delivered and accounting services. And the general idea was get help with the things that are too overwhelming. But if you want to be the one in control, so if you want to be your own chief of staff, for example, that means you have to you have to be the one to figure out all the systems in your life. So you have to figure out the house cleaning system. You can hire a house cleaner to do the actual work, but you still have to figure out the system. So unless you're going to hire someone like a personal assistant to figure out the system that organizes your life, that part of it's on you. And then the idea is you hire as many components of it as you can afford or that make sense for you, that are a good return on investment. It's a good return on investment if it's something that's very draining and overwhelming to you and you just won't do on your own. And that's going to change based on your stage in life. I used to have a house cleaner. I don't have a house cleaner right now, and my house is not overwhelming to me right now. But that's because my kids are older, and there's not as much that I have to do. So I can allocate a few hours a week to just going through the house and cleaning up, whereas before that was very overwhelming for me. All right, well, let's talk about how do we tackle it when we really want to figure out what to do first. We don't have a lot of time. We want to get our life more organized. We want to get our work more organized. We've got to spend most of our day actually doing the things that have to be done that day. So how do we decide where to focus our attention when it comes to getting to the next level of organization? What I had people do is an exercise. Basically, I had them write their vision of perfect organization. So what does your life look like when everything's perfectly organized? That's very important if you're the one that's going to come up with the system of your life, because you have to have a way to see your end result. What is it going to look like when everything's organized? All right, so I have a system for eating my meals, for what my food is. I have a system for paperwork. I have a system for this. Everything has a home. Everything has a container. My closet is only 3/4 of the way full. Whatever it is that your principles are, you want to write those down. It gets to be whatever you want. So if you can't think of anything, that's when you start thinking about, well, is there someone I know that's really organized that can help me think of it? And there's no shame in that. Some of us are more detail-oriented. Some of us love thinking about logistics and how everything should be organized. Capitalize on someone with that talent if that's not your greatest strength. Your greatest strength might be more strategic thinking, or it might be more having great connections with people. So if you have someone who's great at logistics and you're not so great at logistics, then I hire someone to have you come up with the vision. Then you identify what's the gap, what's the biggest pain point, what's the biggest, most glaring difference between where I am now and where I want to be, and then you start thinking about working your way to it. And in order to do that, you have to think of what's the 20% that's going to get me 80% results. We use this formula for a lot of different things. It's basically productivity. If it's your bedroom, your 20% is making your bed. So even if you have a big pile of clutter in the corner of your bedroom, usually making your bed is going to get you the biggest bang for your buck, and then maybe it's putting your clothes away. And once bed and clothes are taken care of, then you have clutter on various surfaces. You can start thinking about that. One hint is that backlog is often very painful, but it's never the 20%. So the way we tend to handle backlog is find a place for it, and it kind of goes into limbo or archives, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. So what we have people do is create a path for themselves, the first 20%, the second 20%, the third 20%. So let's just say it's cleaning my bedroom again. It's going to be making my bed first, putting my clothes away second. Then I'm going to look for the big, obvious piles of clutter. And how do I deal with those? And let's say I have a pile of clutter and it's not something I can easily sort through. Let's say it's a pile of papers or a pile of things that I need to sort through to go to Goodwill. One option is to put all of the clutter unsorted in a box to be sorted. And I know that sounds kind of scary because when are you ever going to get back to it? But that is actually not as much of a problem as you would think, and here is why. Sometimes the things that you archive are a problem now but turn out to be less of a problem later. So let's say that you're very backlogged on paperwork. Let's say that you haven't filed things, you've got paperwork laying all over your office, you have paperwork in your bedroom, you have paperwork down in the kitchen, wherever it is. One thing that you can do with paperwork is just take all the papers, put them in a box, clearly label the box, these are all the papers, and the date. These were all the papers that were in the den, in the bedroom, in the office, all of them unsorted on this date. And all the papers in your house may go in 2 or 3 boxes, depending on how much paper there is. And it all is labeled very clearly that this is unsorted paper. You have no idea what's in it, but at least now it's in 3 boxes, and those 3 boxes can be set neatly in one corner of your house. And you will know that they are there. So you have to make a note to yourself that those boxes are there. If you're going to hide it in a closet, you need to let yourself know that you have 3 boxes of unsorted paperwork in that closet. The idea is that now you get to focus on the most current paperwork, the stuff that's coming in the mail each day, the stuff that's maybe bills that are this month, but the backlog is in the boxes. Now, it may come a time, 3 to 4 months from now, when you have to find a piece of paper that's 6 months old. You know exactly where to look. There's 3 boxes. Those are the only 3 places that piece of paper can be. You look through the 3 boxes, you find the paper, because there's no other place in the house that it can be. And so that's one of the things that's beautiful about coming up with top-level categories for things you're overwhelmed with. Things like stuff that I think I might want to take to Goodwill, but I just don't have time to go through just yet. Or one of my favorites, it's not a favorite at all, but it's a way I handled things. I'd pick up wires and cables that were laying around the house, extra chargers, connectors, and I wouldn't even know if that connector works or doesn't work, or if it goes to a piece of electronic equipment that I'm still using, or maybe it's my 3 phones ago, or 3 computers ago, or maybe it's an extra thing that I will never use, or it's some old camera that I still have but I'm not using. And trying to make decisions about what to do with that becomes too overwhelming. What I do is I create a box. Maybe this time it's a shoe box, and all the electronic wires and cables go into it, and then it's labeled very clearly as electronic wires and cables that don't have a home, that are unsorted again. But again, if I end up later then picking up a camera and going, where's the charger to this camera? There's one box to go to, if it's not in any of the usual places, and it's that box that has all the random wires and cables in it that don't have a place. So what you're doing is you are organizing, but you're organizing very top level, so you're giving yourself a feeling of control over your space without spending the hours that it takes to sort through the details of things. Another thing that's great about this method, and you can use it for emails, for example. If you have 2,000 emails in your inbox, and you're like, I know there's stuff that's important in there, you can create a file folder that says archives, anything from January 2016 to December 2018. So it's 2 years worth of archives that I have that was from my inbox. You label the folder that way, you move all those files in there, and then at least you have a place to look for things. So it's not the ideal filing method. It's not going to get things organized, but what's going to happen, it's not going to get things completely organized, but what's going to happen is it's going to create a temporary holding place for major categories of things, and that gets you less drained. It gets you a little bit of relief. You start feeling a little bit more control over your environment. And then as time goes on, you can choose to go through some of those boxes. And you'll have a day when you'll go through a box of old paperwork and you'll say, okay, I have time now and I have the energy now to go through this box of old paperwork. But let's say you don't. 10 years from now, a box of papers that never was sorted through probably can all be shredded or all be thrown away and be relatively irrelevant. So in 10 years, if you're sorting through a box of papers that's 10 years old, chances are it'll take you 5 minutes to go through that box to see if there's anything super important that you want to keep forever in there. And everything else, receipts, etc., even product manuals, all that stuff can probably be thrown away. So that's another thing with the archive method. With bags of old clothes that you were going to sort through for Goodwill, you end up leaving them in your storage room for 3 years. 3 years from now, you're probably not going to want those clothes anyway. Same with the electronics. So some things you will never get back to, but you'll still be able to throw away. So that's my tip for backlog. We did have a really interesting and fun conversation on all of this stuff, but I will stop for now. As always, if you have any questions, you can use the contact information on the screen to reach me. And good luck and have fun getting yourself organized. What we ended the call with is we all committed to having some kind of organizational systemization and productivity successes this next month. And I hope you do too.